Welcome back to the House of Valkyries podcast, where mythic women lead mythic lives and mythic businesses through energetics, embodiment, and emotional mastery. I'm your host, Carlyraemer, and we are joined today by Jannike Matlock, who is a pivotal part of Valkyries, a holistic nutritionist, a Reiki master, and goes by Eat Run Reiki on Instagram. Hi.
Hi.
Jannike was with Valkyries I keep saying last semester, last round,
Last cohort.
last cohort. And we started at the end of last year at
Was it? I thought we started January.
January.
Yeah, it was like a
January.
new year, new start.
Yeah. But you joined like right when I opened doors. So it was like November of last year. So January for 6 months and then came to retreat at the beginning of August and is joining us for our next Valkyries cohort that starts October 8th. And we're going to talk about all things Valkyries and what Valkyries has done for you.
I'm excited.
Yay, cool. Is there a place that you feel particularly excited about talking about, starting about, or do you want me to prompt you first? Is there anything that's bursting out of you?
Oh, there's nothing that's bursting, so I'm open to some guidance on the conversation.
Yeah, great, cool. Um, I am curious about the Jannike we'll just call it last November, where she was like, fuck yeah, I'm in. Like, what was going on in your life? What was happening for you? What were you struggling with that you were like, this is it?
This is the next step.
Yeah.
Whew. And Valkyrie has been like a big next step. So I first met you when we did our Reiki Master retreat, and you came to our tiny little town in Saskatchewan. And I just at the time I knew like Elaine who was in Valkyries, and she had spoken so highly of it, but it wasn't really anything I had given thought or weight to. I was like, I'm very much like a one thing at a time person, like cross it off my list. And I had done my Reiki initially without any intent of practicing. It was strictly to help me navigate anxiety, years of like clinical depression. It was very much like, okay, this is the next tool for me that's not medication based. I'd kind of run the gamut of that. And then at the retreat, it was lots of very profound moments. Again, never really had an intent of like practicing Reiki with other people, but that has snowballed since. And I remember when I walked away from our Reiki retreat and I had met you, and I was like, oh shit, like there is something. So I was in September, and I was like, oh, like your demeanor, I was like, holy shit, like that's what I want. And I think the last year, 2 years especially, I've really tried to evaluate like my circle and who are the people in my circle and what are they like. Because that quote about you're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. I'm like, there are people in my life that I'm like, I don't want to be like you. I don't want to be the average of this. So when I come across people with this perspective on life and the way that they carry themselves and their beliefs and their trust in themselves, and that was you to me, I was like, oh my God, like, how do I get that? That's what I want. It was really intimidating because I think you were probably one of the first people that I saw fully embody what I have long thought about or wanted, but didn't necessarily know what it would look like. And so I definitely sat on it for a couple of months, like terrified of like, okay, if you're gonna do this, are you gonna be fully in? And I remember talking to my husband about it, being like, I really think this is like the next thing I need to do. Like I've really come a long ways in certain areas of my life, but there's more to this, and I need to understand like what is happening internally. And I'm like, and that's not stuff I'm gonna go read from a book. Like I need people who are living it in my life. And he was just so supportive. And Elaine was like, I really think this is for you and da 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 da. So I'm like, okay, like here we go.
Wow. That was so special for me to hear it. There's so many parts of that that I hadn't heard before.
Yeah.
That's so
I mean,
cool.
it's like things you don't really talk about, but they were like they're my lived narrative.
Yeah. Yeah. What were the things that you saw embodied in me, the things that you had, like you've dreamed about, you want this for yourself. You're like, she has that, I want that. What are
Yeah.
those things?
Even like the when you and Elaine came and picked me up, and even when I first met you, you were just like so calm. Like your energy, your aura was like cool, like this is nice, like here I am. Whereas for me, being in like a new place with people I wouldn't know would terrify me. Like I would really have my guard up and be very, okay, like what am I putting out there? What am I letting people see? And you were just so like, I'm here. And I was like, oh, like that's okay. Like she's just here. Cool. And then even over the course of our weekend at the retreat, I remember you went for walks in the mornings, and it probably sounds so silly and so simple, but at that time, I was still learning how to be comfortable by myself with myself. And so you being like, I'm just gonna go for a walk, ground myself, you like do my things. And I was like, oh, like she really like listens to what she needs first thing in the morning. And those are ideas I had had. Oh, wouldn't it be nice to have a morning routine where you focus on yourself and like yourself, not, oh, I took my greens and my vitamins and here's my morning checklist, but actually just take care of yourself as you are that day. And so it was like these little things. It was nothing big, but it was just the way that you carried yourself all day. I was like, okay, I want that, but in order to do that, I have to understand myself on a level that I don't.
Mm.
And I have to have patience and grace with myself in a way that I don't.
Mhm. How do you feel like you understand yourself now and have patience and grace with yourself now? How has that changed for you?
Oh man, I think if a year ago, if September last year, you would have shown me like, oh, this is what you're gonna look like, or this is who you're gonna be next September, I would have been like bullshit. Because it really has been night and day difference. You've been there like right from ground level. The other women in our Valkyries group that have also seen that transformation, right? It's hard to put it into words, but it's like now, even now in the mornings when I wake up, I do take care of myself, my inside self first thing. I typically lay in bed for an extra few minutes and just like check in, like, how are you feeling right now? Because it's always you think you should start your day feeling good, but that's not always the case. And checking in has made a huge difference. And I think about like I came to Colorado with knowing like essentially not having ever met anybody except for you in person. And I was like, this is great. I can't wait. And I'm like, oh my God, like who am I? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and by yourself too.
By myself, flew down like it's just bizarre and now, but even yeah, but it's like landing there with these women that I've never met in person. Like I stayed at Annika's house night one, and it was as though I've known her for my entire life. And that was you in that car last September. You were just there, you were present, you were there was no like, oh hi, my name is formally this, da da da, right? It was just like, oh, we just pick up where we want to, and it feels normal.
Mm,
And you feel
hmm.
like you can be seen and you can just be yourself, not have to have a front or a facade on. And like, I don't know that I've ever had that with a group of people, let alone a group of women.
Hell yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. There's something really um funny. Is this a funny thing? Is this really the word I want to use? There's something funny about doing the deep work that we do in Valkyries and and getting to know and see and unwaveringly love the parts in other women that they haven't let other people see or love, and previously very likely haven't seen or loved in themselves. So there's really something quite interesting about getting to know other women in this way, like in the deepest depths, and then meeting in person. And like you've seen my stuff. There's nothing else. There's nothing hiding. Like you've seen all the things, all of the places, but we haven't even had conversations about like, oh, also I'm married,
Right.
or like, um,
100%.
this is my business. This is what I do for work. Or like it's more that like it's so the surface level things are like, oh, we didn't even cover those things because we were so here, like in the meat
It's
of.
so interesting to see how they weren't relevant to finding yourself, if that makes sense.
Mm.
Like, how often do we, somebody's like, oh, tell me about yourself. You start with, like, oh, well, I'm married and I have this many kids and this is my job and this is where I live and so on and so forth. As though that's what makes you you. And then in Valkyries, like you said, like, we don't, that doesn't really come up unless, like, it comes up for some other reason. And yet you meet these people and you feel like you know them so intimately. Yeah, which is, it was just so nice. I was like, I don't have to, like, yeah, like you guys have seen me at my like ugly, snottiest cries already on Zoom. Like, hi, here I am.
Right. What facade? There's no mask.
Like, no,
It's
I don't have to
gone.
do that at all. Yeah. Mm.
Hell yeah. Uh, so cool. Amazing. Okay, so jump back into that. It's like we met in Canada in September, and then Valkyrie started calling, and there's this space of like, I think this is it. I think this is going to be the next step. But it's a big next step. I got to make sure that like if I'm going, I'm all in. No, like no pretending, no like toes in. We're all in talking to Jesse. What were your fears at that point? Like what were the things that were coming up in you that were holding you back?
I was like 100% terrified to be seen as I was. It felt very green compared to a lot of the other women. And even before I met them, I kind of had this idea of like, okay, the women that are coming to this didn't just accidentally like stumble across your page. Like there's something that would have led them to you. And for me, like it was the Reiki stuff. But otherwise, it's like your work is deep work. It's not something that somebody accidentally goes, oh, I think I'll pick that up this weekend and like go hang out. So there was a lot of fear of seeming inadequate or like not ready to do the work, like inexperienced. I don't really know what the right word is there, but just not being prepared for what it was going to take because it was like so many of the things you talked about on your Instagram page. Even I was like, oh, that's new jargon for me. Like, I don't even know what that means right now. I'm like, oh shit, like, what am I getting into? And the other fear that has continued to actually play out over time was I knew committing to this was likely going to cause a ripple effect in many other areas of my life. And I don't, as much as I was like, yes, I want this, there was that hesitation of like, do you really want this? Are you really okay to blow up everything that you have come to know as normal or yours or predictable? And there's still a lot of ripples that are figuring themselves out, and there will be more coming into this next cohort of Valkyries. But it was things with like personal relationships where you just learn to view them a little bit differently once you start to understand yourself on a different level. And even like my work has really changed, and how I care to do business has changed a lot, which at times has felt very like steps backwards because the formula that I had was like, oh, this works. It always yields results. But it wasn't the results I wanted anymore. Those results didn't feel very aligned with myself. So that was the biggest fear was like, okay, but are you actually ready to change? Because once you start this, you don't get to put blinders on and be like, oh, no, I don't see anything wrong. Right? When you know better, you need to do better.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that point of I want to change. I want it's a split energetic. Like
Mm-hmm.
so one part or many parts of us want to change, consciously wants to change. And we're like, I want my life to be more aligned. I want to lead intuitively. I want to be more receptive. I want to develop intimacy in relationships. And these other parts are like, fuck no, I don't.
Yeah.
And
Like
so
I want what I have, but better. But I don't want to give up anything that I have. I just want it to get better. And it's like, well, that's actually not how
Mhm.
it works. It's almost like a breaking down of what currently exists. And there has definitely been moments where I'm like, oh my God, like I feel like I'm starting over. And I think that can feel so defeating at times if you don't have the perspective that, right, but you get to choose how you build it back up now versus slapping stickers on something that already existed, trying to make it look nicer.
Yeah. Yeah, and we bring it through in a different way than our bodies and our brains and our psyches are used to, where the like what we've been used to is building life in a linear masculine these are the old ways of success.
Mhm.
um and we're now flipping the entire script and realigning to the feminine, and the feminine doesn't work in linear ways. She doesn't give a fuck about a timeline or or like if this makes sense on paper, or one thing after another, like, well, this is how this goes, and then we do this, and then we do this. She'll destroy the whole thing and actually put you back in alignment with your truth and your soul and your sovereignty and your center. And that's very confronting to the masculine way of building a
I was
successful
gonna
life.
say like ego. It
Yeah.
had to be like I had to be okay to kind of like check my ego at the door for growth. Like because I'm very used to being in environments where I thrive or where I am at the upper end of things. I can manage, I can lead, I can I can dictate, right? Like I know things inside out. And every single part of Valkyries put me in a place where I was like, oh my God, like I have to ask for help. I have to be open to learning from others. Like I don't feel that I can contribute yet the way that I would typically feel I can contribute to things. And that was a blow to the ego more than anything else, I think. And so that, again, that fear of being seen as like, well, this is how I am right now. And I think a lot of that fear was driven from typical friendships and relationships where you, and for me, we've talked about this a lot. I come with the baggage of feeling that relationships have often been transactional in my life. So stepping into Valkyries and being like, oh my God, I don't know what I can offer these women, and yet I'm just gonna like soak up everything they have to give was such an unsettling experience for me.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. And to come into Valkyries and feel like you didn't have anything to offer.
Mhm.
And all of them are like, oh my God, Jannike, like we can't get enough of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, even that was eye-opening, right? Of like what you think you know or what you've come to accept as this is the only truth for so long.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is ego humbling, which is sweet. Like our egos are so sweet. There's so many spiritual places that make our egos wrong. And I'm not, this, I'm not here for making any parts of ourselves wrong. Um, but and the ego just she just wants to keep us safe
Hmm.
and stay in known territory. Ego loves identity and like this is how I've identified, this is who I am. And when I know who I am and how I relate to other people in the world, then I'm safe and loved, right? And so anytime we start to shift our identity or who we think we are, which is much more vast and strange than who we think we are, um, the ego, yeah, is like the ego and all of our parts that are attached are like flustered,
Mhm.
freaked out for sure.
I like how you mentioned like that feeling of safety, because I think that was that hesitation of like, are you sure you're about to, like, you're okay with this? Because you're choosing to strip away your safety, like your foundation. But I think the months leading up to it, I had kind of realized that while things felt safe because they were predictable, routine, very much like, okay, yes, like I know how this is going to go, I started to lack like a feeling of safety with myself, because I realized that I was so dependent on everything just staying the same around me in order to feel safe. Like it wasn't actually that I felt safe with myself, right? And so it was like, well, how can you say this is safe when you don't want to spend any time with yourself?
Mhm.
Right. So that was like at the Reiki retreat, you going for walks in the morning and me being like, oh my God, I could not fathom spending 10 minutes with myself first thing in the morning. Right. It's like, well, what are you really holding on to then?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just feeling that the paradox of these the ways that we create safety externally. And when we begin to shift them, it feels like the rug is being flipped, the rug's being pulled out, and we're like, oh God. Um, but what actually becomes available is a deepening of internal safety so that when things do shift, when things go awry, when life throws surprises at us, when we work in cahoots with the mystery, that this internal solidity, concrete sense of safety is actually our unshakability. That's like, I've got myself here. I'm good. I'm actually not standing on any ground whatsoever. Everything's just changed. This has happened, and I'm good.
And I would say that's probably what I wanted more than anything, was to feel safe with myself, because I never have. Like I'll be 35 right away, and never before have I felt like safe by myself as I am, or secure with myself. Actually, like I have a tattoo on my leg that says wherever you go, there you are. And I got it years ago as a reminder that like I couldn't keep running and trying to find a new place to run from what was happening. And it's probably like 6 years old. So obviously this has been like 6 years of my body being like, girl, like, let's figure this out. And then while we were in Valkyries, I was also training for my like ultra marathon, and a mantra that a friend and I had kind of like hashed out ended up being like, you are safe with her. Because she would see that when we'd go running together, as soon as something was off, the footing changed or weather wasn't great or my heart rate would like get really high, I would get very anxious and I would kind of shut down, my gait would change, my everything, my running would just like clam right up. And she started telling me like, hey, like you're okay. And she would tell me, you're safe with yourself. Like you have to remind yourself you're safe with yourself. And I was like, excuse me? Like what? There's some person who has nothing to do with Valkyries, but she's a close friend, and is like, here she's saying the same words. And so when I was doing my ultra marathon this summer, that was my mantra. Anytime that I got very panicky, it was just, you're safe with her, you're safe with her. And her being like, I would say my feminine more than anything, because my masculine's been like top dog and running the show for 30 years. But it was just such a comforting thing to be able to say it and to understand it, but also to believe it.
Mm, mm-hmm.
Right? Like it's one thing to tell yourself, if you don't believe it, like who cares? But this really like brought me down time and time again.
Yeah.
Just that cultivating safety with yourself.
Yeah. It's much different when we embody it versus just
Mhm.
run the affirmation of it.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. How does safety and security internally feel now?
It makes me feel sorry and sad for my younger self
Mm.
that didn't have it. Like anxiety ruled my life for most of my like 12 and on. And I would say it's probably always going to be a part. Like you don't really get rid of type A personality. But when I was coming home from Colorado this time, like all my flights got canceled and changed, and it was just a right shit show, to put it nicely. And I just remember the morning that I got my flight changes, I was like, oh, like that's off. And I could feel the anxiety bubbling, but there was no panic. There was no, like, quickly, let's fix this. I was like, okay, like, we're gonna take this as it comes. And it ended up being a complete nightmare to get home, like, stranded in an airport and this, that, and the other. But not once did I, like, lose my shit. Which just, that was the first time that I think I saw it fully embodied in an unexpected circumstance, which is why I wanted to work on it anyways, right? I mean, it's nice to feel that way day to day, but it's in those moments of panic where you typically revert to what feels safe. And for me, what felt safe was to stay calm, to remind myself that I was in control. I'll get home. It's okay. It's not like the end of the world. And I actually, like, I shocked myself. I was messaging my husband during all of it, and he was like, he's like, I'm so proud of you. Like, Jannike from 6 months ago wouldn't have been able to handle this. And then I had actually made like a little post about it on Instagram because it took me by surprise. And the amount of people that reached out that said, like, oh, I can't believe you stayed calm. Like, I would have been so angry and upset, and I would have been crying and this, that, and the other. And I was like, yeah, like that would have typically been my response. But I can also see how that typical response was influenced by the people I usually had turned to for advice and guidance in those situations, and having very purposefully separated myself a little bit from them and having the opportunity to decide for myself, what do I want this to look like and feel like? And then it was like, oh my God, I'm doing it. I'm doing the thing.
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, you did.
And so that was just, it was just such a wild realizing, like it was chaos. And then to have that moment of like, oh my God, you're doing it differently. Like, look at you go. Was just so rewarding.
That's so great. Yeah, when we dropped you off at the airport too, I had no concerns about you.
Mhm.
There was no like uh no internal wounded mother being like, oh my God, I hope she's gonna be okay. Like I know that she's had a hard time with panic and anxiety in the past. I thought, you know, blah, blah, blah. Like for me, I was like, she's got it. She's gonna be
Yeah.
so good. And you know, I don't know what's going on. Like I don't know what's gonna happen for you. I don't you could be stuck at this airport for 3 days. Or who knows, you know, but I knew in my body that you had you in your body. Like this is what it is. This is a situation. This is what life is handing her, and she's fucking good.
Yeah. And even at the airport, it was interesting because everybody was in a tizzy and upset. Like there were so many issues because it was a whole airline. And it was like I could feel people like as I got closer to them, and I was like, nope, like I don't want to be, no, thank you. And so, they'd ask their question, and rather than stay there and linger and participate in the angry conversation, because like misery loves company, I was like, nope, like I actually can't be here. Like I need to leave. Whereas previously, yeah, I would have wanted somebody to like bitch with me and be upset with me and like, be in the trenches here with me. And so being recognizing like, okay, no, this situation is not serving you right now. You have the option to leave. Like, and that was big in itself. Yeah, I don't know. It was just such a like, oh, look at you go. If I
Yeah.
could give myself a gold star, I would have.
Yeah, you can. We'll do it now.
Well,
Gold stars.
I got through security, and I was like, okay, we're here. We have 45 minutes till we board. I was like, what do you need right now? Like, what is it that you need? I was like, tacos. I need tacos. So I went and I sat and I ordered tacos and ate them, and it was delicious, and got a donut for the plane. And I was like, cool. Like, okay, off we go.
Needs are met. Okay.
Yeah, but I think like even like that, checking in, what do I need right now? Like what is going to make me feel here versus outside of my body? And I think typically would have been like, okay, well, call your husband and call your parents and be upset and let them feed into this with you, you know? But instead I was like, no, like they're all there. I messaged everybody that like I'm good. I'll keep you posted on when I get home. I personally just need some food right now, and that's what I'm going to take care of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have found that Valkyrie's practices are super helpful for travel, period. Like also really helpful when shit goes awry and you're not managing other stuff. It's so helpful to have embodied energetic practices to know how to move your own stuff so that you can be stable and calm for the other things. And airports are wild. Like there's so much energy in an airport, and we're like picking other people's stuff up and other people's anxiety and other people's drama. Like there's an existential kink in here where like we love drama, right? We love to be in this like yeah, and that and, oh my god, it really went wrong, and like totally misery loves company. And it's so Valkyrie's practices are so helpful in airports and just like moving energy through your body and keeping yourself energetically clean. Like, nope, I'm not picking that up. Or like, ooh, I picked that up. I'm gonna let that go. I've had such a blast traveling specifically in airports since I've been doing this work. So the last 5 years, 6 years of my life, I'm just like, I fucking love traveling.
And yeah, like my husband used to make a joke that I had two personalities, and one was called airport yawns because I would like fly off the fucking handles at airports. Like I hated them so much. And because I've always been very like empathetic, like I will pick up anybody's shit left, right, and center and I will make it my own. And I will like observe things and then get anxious about what I'm observing. And he's like, why are you doing this? I'm like, I don't know where else to look. You know, and it's like I'm that person that checks, oh, have I lost my passport in the last 5 minutes since I last put it in my bag? Like that I want to say that was me because that's not me anymore. And so when he was like, "Oh my God, like you're handling this so well," it's because like he has seen me for over a decade losing my ever living shit in airports because my anxiety cannot handle all the unknowns and all the variables that are like flying around me. So yeah, like travel is going to be 10 times better than it ever has before. Yeah. I even found that I was like the stewardesses, the flight attendants, I could notice their like demeanor because I mean they'd probably been put through their ringer quite a bit that day. But I found myself actually going out of my way and asking them, like, hey, how are you doing? Because I could see that they were just defeated. And I was like, I'm in a good enough place right now that I can hold space for you, as opposed to taking it out on you that I can't
Mm.
regulate myself right now.
Mm.
And like even that just felt like I want to say like felt like such a gift to be able to see the change in what I was putting out there, knowing that I fully contribute to what everybody else is feeling.
Mm. Beautiful.
Yeah.
I want to pop back to maybe 20 minutes ago. You were sharing about it was one of the fears before jumping in, and I would imagine was still there in the beginning of Valkyries. Um, because I experienced the same thing in at the beginning of my journey. And it's like being a being a beginner. Like there's I don't know the lingo yet. I don't know the language. I don't know what the fuck they're talking about. I don't know, like all of these women in this room seem to know something that I don't know. Like I'm totally at a loss. Um I was also there, like the where I was when I started the work that became Valkyries, and I was a self-prescribed, socially anxious, hot mess. Like even having this, I would not be able to have this conversation on Zoom with you. I would not be able to hold a group of women. being in a Zoom classroom like freaked my nervous system out. I stuttered, I turned red, I couldn't hold a thought. I was gonna say a stream of thought, but I couldn't even hold one thought. I was like so obsessive about what I was about to say because I didn't want to say it wrong that I would forget what I was going to say and then I'd leave my body. I was a mess. So anyway, the work that ended up being what changed so much for me and became Valkyries, or at least like the ground floor of Valkyries, which has grown and expanded so much over the years. That very first container for me, I was in that version of my shoes where I was like, I don't even know. I don't know what you're saying. I don't know what that word means. I've never heard that before. And all of the women in this other room with me were like, at least I thought, I'm like, they're all in on it. They know, they know. I didn't know what the word container was, like masculine, feminine, like
Yeah.
whatever, totally out. Um, and even phrases like holding space. I'd never heard that before. Like I was a fucking noob. Um, and I was I was an advanced beginner. I picked it up real fast and I honestly I think I picked up these tools and in 8 weeks I started my own practice because I was like, this shifted me so fucking fast and have changed my life so deeply. I would be doing an enormous disservice to not be doing this. But okay, so being in that room as a some form of beginner. Um, what I want to say to this point is that Valkyries brings in a spectrum of journeyers, like beginners, advanced, like I say spectrum because it's super fluid. And like
100%.
what is
Like
all of this
literally
anyway?
all walks of life.
Yes, yes, yes. And some women have been on an internal journey for all of their lives in 20 years. And some women come in and they're like, I'm super fresh. I just started yesterday. um it tends to be toward the more like I've tried this modality, I've tried this, there's still something missing. But speaking as an advanced beginner myself, just like jumping into container and like, all right, I'm here. Who's coming? um what Valkyries does and why actually this part isn't important. Like I don't need you to know a bunch of stuff. In fact, I don't want you to know a bunch of stuff because I actually find that the more stuff that you know, the more resistance there is to getting into the body, the more things that you know about your own.
You intellectualize it,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. The intellectualizing and conceptualizing of our own healing actually blocks you from being with the energy in your body. But that's irrelevant, but also an aside. Um, the like I said earlier, the language of Valkyries is energy and embodiment. And so I'm speaking like when I'm teaching, and also when we're on journeys or in a somatic practice, I'm actually speaking to your energy and your body. And so it doesn't matter that the concepts and words aren't landing in the brain. That'll come later. And sometimes that comes like 6 months later or like a year later. And the brain will be like, oh, like clicking
Yeah.
things. But when we work with the energy and embodiment, this is where we start to shift on those levels. And that's really when you're able to step into new possibilities and new frequencies and really, really deeply work with the things that have kept us back. Yeah.
Mhm.
So beginner, advanced, like we're not talking to the parts of you that know things. We're talking to the parts of you that feel things.
And I think when you, as you mentioned, like when you're talking to somebody's energy, like that doesn't have a timeline of like, oh, I'm a beginner or I'm a professional at this, right? Like your energy is just your energy. It's not influenced by how well versed you are with this stuff. It's a matter of how much are you willing to feel it. I think, more than anything. And that probably was my greater resistance, like the beginning, more than the idea of like, oh, I don't know these words or I don't know the language. It was the like resistance of allowing my energy to be seen and felt, because I was just like, what fresh hell is this? Like, no, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And how do you feel about it now?
It's so funny because, oh man, like I think that took me by surprise more than anything. Like I am a great student. Like I will pump my tires on like on an intellectual level, I'm a great student. Like give me a book, I'll read it, seminars, I will do all of that. Oh my God, tell me to like feel my body. And I'm like, what? Is there like index for that? Because the first, I think like the first time we met, we did like the shaking, and I was like, what do you mean I have to shake? I'm like, I don't like this. I don't like having to, it would like, and it's such a small thing, like, oh, we shake. And I was like, why do I have to shake? I don't like it was, I couldn't compute. I was like, do I have to dance? No, we're not dancing, we're just moving. What do you mean I'm just moving? Like, what am I trying to do? Like I needed a step by step, and that was so freaking hard for me. Um, which seems so weird, because the other night Jesse and I were sitting and we're watching some show, and I was just like, life's been busy and I had like quite a bit of anxiety building up. And I found myself like I got up and I was just like shaking beside the couch, and I was like moving around, and he was like, what the fuck are you doing? And I was like, oh, I'm like, I didn't even realize that I was doing it, because I just knew I had to get up and move. Like the body did it, the brain was not even there. And so when he was like, what are you doing? And I was like, oh my God, what? Oh, look at me, I'm doing it.
Doing it.
And then one of those moments of like, hey, 8 months later, it feels like, yes, we're here. And so, and he's gotten like used to it. Like I've told him, I'm like, oh, I have such a, especially when we started, he would always ask like, how was class? How was it? How are you doing? And I'm always like, I was like, frick, like it's so hard for me to just be comfortable like with my physical body without instruction, like letting the energetics influence your physical movement versus your brain was something that I had 100% never done or allowed or felt was like appropriate. And that was my, and it still is like one of my biggest pieces of resistance, which is so because I get curious about like why, like where did that stem from, or like what is the belief that I have around this that makes this so challenging. And I know like Violet did a class the one time, and that like fucked me up for like 3 days afterwards. I was like, what is happening right now? Because everybody did like a little debrief after, and I was just like, I'm not ready to talk about it. Because I didn't know, like I went with it and I was like fully in it, and then I popped back and I was like, oh, what was that?
Mhm,
How do I make sense of this?
mhm, mhm,
Yeah, so, and that I think even like at the retreat, you've got women that have been doing this for forever, and it's still a practice of getting into your body. It doesn't matter. There's always, yes, I'm here and ready to do this today, or like I'm up against resistance.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, yeah. Mm, man, there's a lot we could unpack in what you just, but we only have 10 minutes left. Um, yeah, so the we'll unpack it on a later day. If we need to do Jannike House of Valkyries podcast part 2, we absolutely can. Um, the the practice that Violet brought in, Violet, up until this next cohort, Violet has been a guest facilitator. There are 6, sometimes 7 guest facilitators in Valkyries. So Violet came on as a guest, and she's going to be co-piloting, co-facilitating with me in the net in Valkyrie 6. And what she brought was an embodiment practice. It was I would call it I think I would call it a sensuality practice.
Mhm.
Um, that's essentially what I give you in Valkyries as your morning practice. And it's allowing the energy of your body to show you how to move, to show you how to open your own heart, how to open your own body. And I remember this. I remember this coming out of it. Coming out of it, and you were like, "Fuck no!" Like, "Fuck no." I've had my spot with that too. Absolutely. I have. I mean, years ago at this point, but I had a session where some part of me was so triggered and so pissed that I left my screen. I would have been like in the corner over there, and I like took myself through a full-on rage practice instead of the
Mhm.
um oh, it was like a basically like a floor practice, a floor version of like a strip
Mhm.
routine.
Yep.
And my some part of me was pissed. And so I was like, I was over there and I was like crying and like yelling into a pillow because I was like, this is the one who nobody fucking told me. I was not ready for this. What the fuck? And I'm like yelling behind my screen. So anyway, I never told you that, but I like really empathized with that part of you
Yeah.
that was like, nope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It, yeah. Bleh, bleh. Yeah. The embodiment piece as a whole has been and will continue to be the part that I think reveals the most to me about where the work needs to be done. Um, because again, I'm really good at intellectualizing shit and like having the words for things. But having the feeling for things is like such a whew, no, thank you. Like even our rage practices, I learned to like love them, but it took me forever to finally be willing to drop into them fully and to make sound. Like making sound is still one. Like I shake voluntarily now all the time. But making sound still feels um very exposed. And so the more, yeah, it's the embody things that really show me like this is where you have work to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Meeting edges is edgy, turns
Ugh.
out. Yeah.
Spicy.
Yeah. Yeah. Podcast on Thursday will be about rage.
Mhm.
So if that piques your interest, tune in then. Um, okay, so 5 minutes left, and I'm gonna drop two prompts and we'll just see where they go. Um, I want to know why you're coming back in, and for any women that are listening that are feeling the call, they're like, oh, Valkyries. Like it make my heart beat faster. What do you want them to know? So
So you like said like why am I coming back? And I just got emotional like instantly.
hey.
Those of you that can't see my face, it's like teary face. Um, I can't imagine going back to living life without the support of Valkyries. Um, the work has been so meaningful and impactful that to not follow through with it feels like a disservice to myself and to anything that I hope to do in the future, whether that's personal, relationships, business, whatever the case is. I can already see how much of a better person, and I will put money on that. I'm a better person now than I was a year ago, simply because I'm willing to look inwards and be really fucking uncomfortable with myself sometimes. And how do you experience that and then not keep going? Um, yeah, like I told you, you're stuck with me for life, like Valkyrie lifetime membership here. Um, because my life is so much richer for the work that we've done, for you, for the women I've gotten to meet, that I was like, this is a non-negotiable. And I think it's very rare that we find things in life that we're like, I need to hold on to this. Things are very fleeting. I think especially in our society where there's always something new and shiny and this, that, and the other, that when you find women that speak to your soul, and you find a place where you feel safe while figuring out how you can be safe with yourself, there's no other option but to keep doing this. And for any woman that is listening and been on the edge of it, I feel like I am your tried and true example of somebody that walked in extremely green, aware that like shit was going to get hard, cried through almost all 7 months of it, but still here proclaiming that this is the most important work I've ever done for myself, for my family, and for anything, like I said, I plan to do in the future.
I have chills all the way up to my ears.
Yeah. There's a life has just been too good amidst the chaos since January to think that this is a coincidence or, oh, that's just how things go. It's like, no, this was purposeful.
Thank you. That was a beautiful, beautiful closure. Okay. So if you are at this point and you still have questions, please ask either of us. And Valkyrie 6 starts on October 8th. Jannike has a discount that is just her name. So go see her for that, or I'll pop it in the show notes also. Jannike actually has a higher discount than some of my other ones because she's Canadian, and it's really important for me to work with the crazy ass exchange rate. So if you are Canadian, don't get her.
Hook a girl up.
Hook a girl up. Yeah, go get Jannike's discount into Valkyrie 6. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
No, me too. You're such a blast. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Over and out. Love you all. See you soon.